Can you imagine being face to face with God and telling him what he should be like? To impose on him your sense of right behavior, right attitude? Can you imagine the audacity, even ignorance, that would be required to tell God that the manner in which he has dealt with you, with others, with mankind, is in your opinion wrong, unfair, unjust? I imagine his response would sound something like this: "Who are you to question me without any knowledge?" Well, I guess I don't really have to imagine, because that's exactly what he said when someone simply doubted his methods. One of my favorite exchanges in all of Scripture is the conversation Job has with God toward the end of the book of Job. Job was one of the really good guys of all time. I mean, he lived a life that was above reproach. Can you imagine having the holy God of the universe examine your life and declare about you, "There is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil"? Well, he said that about Job on two different occasions. He looked at the life of Job and discovered a man who lived blameless. He feared God and eschewed evil. This is a man who God looked at and found nothing with which to take issue. Not many of us could ever stand up to such scrutiny, but Job did. As many of you know, shortly after this declaration, Job's life goes downhill, and it goes downhill fast. God allows Satan to test Job's spiritual resolve, and in the first affliction, Job loses all his considerable wealth. All of his donkeys and oxen are stolen. All of his sheep and servants are murdered. In addition to this, all of his children, both sons and daughters, are killed when a roof collapses. This upright, above reproach man loses everything, and his response is, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." That is unbelievable. He loses everything, and yet he blesses God. Only someone who understands his place under the sovereign rule of God could respond in such a manner. But Satan, still believing he can evoke a denunciation of God from the lips of Job, brings forth a second affliction. And this time he attacks the man himself. Shortly after Job's great losses, he is struck with open, oozy, pus-filled sores all over his body, and he is left sitting in ashes, cleaning his wounds with broken pottery. And when his wife comes to him in this state with the temptation to curse God and die, he responds by saying, "Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" The record rightly showed that in all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Job, at this point, has yielded to the right of God, as God, to do what he seems fit. He doesn't appeal to any of his own perceived rights or fairness, but simply yields in his humble status under God's rightful majesty. He rightfully perceived God because he humbly understood his own status. I bring up the story because one of the great casualties of the prideful state produced by the theology of me is sound theology itself. Theology, literally translated from the Greek, is the study of God. And it is our perception of God that takes the greatest hit when we are captured by a pride that does not allow us to lay aside our own perceptions and see God as he is, as revealed in Scripture. C.S. Lewis expresses the threat that pride is to the knowledge of God in his chapter in Mere Christianity entitled The Great Sin. In that chapter, he says, pride always means enmity. It is enmity. And not only enmity between man and man, but enmity to God. In God, you come up against something that is in every aspect immeasurably superior to yourself. Unless you know God as that, and therefore know yourself as nothing in comparison, you do not know God at all. As long as you are proud, you cannot know God. The knowledge of God, and therefore theology, requires a humility that accepts and embraces God for who and what he is. And this calls us to abandon our own personal understandings that are birthed in our own views and presuppositions. Unfortunately for many, our understanding of God is formulated by our own sense of right and wrong, and our own desires for what we want God to be. And as a result, most of the views of God that are espoused in the modern American church reflect our self-centered, self-absorbed, self-righteous, self-aggrandizing culture. We have become masters at forging God into our own image, and as such, blithely enter into the age-old brotherhood of idolatry. In fact, this is where C.S. Lewis tells us our pride eventually leads. This raises a terrible question, he says. How is it that people who are quite obviously eaten up with pride can say they believe in God and appear to themselves very religious? I'm afraid it means they are worshiping an imaginary God.